Today I'll be showing you my finished Sevilla Blouse, giving you an update on all my works in progress, and chatting about winter gift knits. Hello everyone, my name is Julia. Welcome back to my channel Hella Knits. I'm here with another chatty podcast episode just to catch you guys up on what I've been working on the past couple weeks. Today I'm wearing my Esther Sweater, which is from Petiteknit. I made this in Les Garçons yarn, Falkland DK, held with a strand of silk mohair. And I chat about this more in my last podcast video if you want to learn more about it. But yes, this is what I'm wearing today. Let's just get into it. The first thing I want to discuss is something I finished since the last episode. It's my Sevilla Blouse. Here it is. Okay, so she is all done. Excuse the wrinkles. It's literally been already sitting in my knit drawer and got wrinkled. This is a pattern from Petiteknit. It's a top-down boat neck top with a rolled neckline here. It has a drop shoulder and then it's just knit all the way in the round for the body, no increases on the sleeves, and then it has this 1x1 ribbing on the cuff of the sleeves and the cuff of the body. I finished this a couple weeks ago. It was actually shortly after I filmed my last video. I was talking about it and it got me really motivated to keep working on it and actually finish it, because I've been getting so much wear out of my Cumulus blouse, which is a v-neck, kind of v-neck version of this with a summer yarn, and I wanted another one so I could rotate my late summer top selections. So yeah, that really did motivate me to finish this. I knit this with one strand of Knitting for Olive pure silk in the color raspberry pink, and then one strand of the Sandnes Garn Lena in the color Bubblegum Pink. This is what the yarn looks like in the ball. Excuse that this is an absolute mess. It got caught on my yarn winder. This is the Sandnes Garn Lena in the color Bubblegum Pink, and this is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in raspberry pink, and as you can see, they're pretty much a perfect match. The Sandnes Garn is a little cooler tone, and then the Knitting for Olive is a little warm tone, but when you hold them together, you can't really see too much of a marl happening. Let's see if I can show you. The color is pretty uniform, I think. And the fabric is really weighty actually, because it's a worsted weight. I'm pretty sure the gauge on this pattern is 19 stitches, and I did hit 19 stitches, but I had to go down to a 4mm needle to meet that gauge. I wound up doing that because I found that when I used the suggested needle in the pattern, which I think is a 4.5, maybe a 5, it was too gapey for me, and I felt like it was kind of see-through. So I sized down. This is a really weighty sweater, but as you can see, it has quite a good drape to it. The only thing is it does wrinkle really easily, but honestly, like, that goes away when you wear it, so that's fine. I really liked working with the silk and the linen together. The Sandnes Garn Lena is a linen blend yarn, and then the Knitting for Olive is 100% silk. I wound up making the size extra small for this pattern. I'd originally cast on a size small, but I decided to rip it back and change to an extra small because I didn't want this to be too oversized. I wanted it to be more fitted like a top instead of an oversized sweater. I'm glad that I wound up going with the extra small because it is still a little bit oversized now that I've blocked it and finished it. So I definitely think the small would have been way too big. I can put some B-roll of me wearing this top over me talking so you can see what it looks like on. I essentially knit it to pattern. There are some short rows on the back of the neck to shape the neckline a little bit, and then aside from that, it's just straight all the way down the body and straight down the sleeves. I knit the sleeves to the recommended length and the body to the recommended length, and I have 2 balls of silk left over. So I don't know what was happening there, if I got the wrong quantity of yarn, but now I have 2 balls of pure silk left over, so I'm gonna have to figure out what I want to make with that. I'm wondering if I can do a fingering weight top or like a tank top or something. Let me know if you guys have any ideas of like patterns I could use with that amount of yarn. I think 1 ball is around 400 meters, so that's definitely enough for a top. Something else I had an issue with when I was knitting this pattern is picking up for the sleeves. The sleeve pickup rate was not right. Like, I had to pick up more stitches than what it said. I think it said to pick up 2 out of every 3, and I had to pick up more than that. So I wound up pulling out the sleeve sleeve a couple times and redoing the pickup, which was kind of frustrating, honestly. I don't know what it is with some petite knit patterns. Sometimes the sleeve pickup is perfect and sometimes it is way off from what I had. I'm wondering if that's because when it tells you to knit the front and back yoke, it just tells you to knit a certain length as opposed to a certain number of rows. So if it gave you the row count for the back yoke to the bottom of the sleeve, obviously the number of stitches you pick up would be more accurate to the pattern, whereas like my row gauge could very well be off compared to petite knits, and so then that would leave a different number of stitches around the armhole to pick up. That's probably what happened, but it is really frustrating when I have to pick up the sleeve a couple times. Aside from that, it was really straightforward to knit. It kind of got boring after a while because it's just stockinette and there's nothing going on. But it's one of those knits that's actually really worth it because I have gotten a good amount of wear out of this since I finished it. And it's a little heavier than my Cumulus blouse, which is nice. So I feel like I can wear it longer into the fall. The one thing that I will say is the boat neck is pretty wide. So if you're bothered by having your bra strap or whatever showing underneath, that is something to keep in mind. I wonder if maybe you could change the amount of stitches that you pick up for the back and front to make the hole a little bit smaller. I feel like maybe if I made this again, I might do that. Not because I'm bothered by my bra strap showing, but because I find I'm worried that it's gonna fall off my shoulder. It hasn't, and it's been pretty good with staying on, but it's like right at the border of the curve of my shoulder where sometimes I feel like it might fall off. I had discussed in the last video potentially doing increases on the sleeves, similar to the blouse number 1 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, but I had decided against doing that just because I liked the look of the straight sleeve all the way down. One thing I am noticing now that I'm looking at it is there is a decent amount of pilling, and I've worn this a few times, but I don't know if you can see, there's just a little bit of pilling. So I wonder if that's the pure silk or if that's the linen, but it probably is going to need to be depilled a little more than the average sweater. That's okay, it's really comfy. The fabric turned out really, really soft, and it has a nice drape to it as well. Yeah, I'm really happy with this knit. I'm so glad that I got it done before it got super cold outside. The Sevilla blouse is my only finished thing since the last time I filmed, so let's chat about all the things I've been working on. I have 2 main projects that I've been working on mostly in the last few weeks, and the first one is the Cloud blouse from Petiteknit. The Cloud blouse is a top-down drop shoulder sweater with a rolled kind of funnel neck and then just a very short ribbing on the body and sleeves. Kind of similar shape to the Sevilla blouse, but it's not made of a summer yarn. I had showed this in the last video and it was hardly anything. It was just a couple inches long, but now it's quite a bit bigger and I've finished a sleeve. So this sweater, you pick up on the back of the neck and you do some increases, and then you pick up along the shoulders, which actually have this pearl detail here on the shoulder seam. You pick up the shoulders, you shape the neckline with increases, and then you pick up for the drop shoulder again with this little pearl detail. And there's some decreases on the sleeve and then a little bit of ribbing and then the rolled hem on the sleeve. And then you pick up the neck later and it's just a few rounds of stockinette to leave this kind of rolled appearance. This is a petite knit pattern. I'm knitting the size small for the Cloud blouse. Now I discussed this at length in my last video. I got the yarn and I knew I wanted to make this sweater, but my gauge was off. So my gauge is 19 stitches. I believe the Cloud sweater has the same construction and it's got a 17 stitch gauge. And then the Cloud blouse has a 20 stitch gauge. And the yarn is different, but the construction is like essentially the same. Based on my gauge, I decided to make the size small of the Cloud blouse, and that's what this is. So far it's turning out really nicely. I wanted the circumference of the sweater to be like 105 210 centimeters around, because that's like the preferred size for a nice oversized, not too oversized sweater for me. That's why I decided on the Cloud blouse in the size small. It took me forever to like sort out what I wanted to do. Yeah, now that it's coming along, I am really happy with the size and the fit that I think it's going to give. The pattern is pretty basic. I described it already, but yeah, it's like a drop shoulder. I actually didn't realize, I don't know why, I didn't realize before I started it that it has these pearl details on the seams. I've never really been a fan of the pearl details if I'm honest, but I decided to just go with it this time and see how it turns out. I don't know, I just felt like mixing it up. I think it's cute. I think it adds a little bit because the rest of the sweater is like pretty plain. So the ribbing actually doesn't have a different needle size. You use the same size needle for the ribbing. And I should mention I'm knitting this on a 4mm needle. I gauge swatched a couple times and I was just happiest with this fabric with the 4. You can see it's not very see-through. I don't know if you can see my finger wiggling, but yeah, it's not very see-through. When I cast on with a different size needle, like a larger one, it was too gapey, so this is what I'm going with. Yeah, the sweater pattern is honestly pretty straightforward. Like I said, I cast on the sleeve. I picked up for the sleeve and I finished the first sleeve, and now I'm partway through the second sleeve and I'm just using magic loop here. I'm doing that because I really don't want to run out of yarn, so I'm doing the sleeves first and then I'm going to use the rest of the yarn for the body. Speaking of yarn, I can chat about the yarn that I'm using. The yarn I'm using for this sweater is some yarn that I actually got on my trip to Iceland this summer. So this is Ístex Plötulopi in the color 1766, which is this like really fiery orange color, and I'm holding it with a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color blood orange. It's not an exact match, but I'm actually really happy with how the colors sort of complement each other, I guess. And the fabric is really nice. So you can see the Plötulopi is a lot more orange, but when it's held with the mohair, it's got this really nice like fiery red color. So I really think that the silk mohair adds a lot of dimension, and I'm really happy with how the fabric is turning out. This is the second ball of Plötulopi out of 3 that I have for this sweater. The first sleeve used about half of it, so I'm pretty confident that I can get the rest of the sleeve out of this ball. And then I guess it's not a ball. It's a plate. They call them plates for the unspun yarn. Hopefully I can get the remainder of sleeve 2 out of this plate, and then the third plate will just be for the rest of the body. I don't want the sweater to be too long either, and I feel like this sweater I might have to shorten it based on the pattern because Petiteknit sweaters are usually a little bit too long for me. So we'll just see where it gets me, but I don't want to say you can't get this here because they do sell Plötulopi here in Canada, but I've not seen this colorway in Canada. And so I'm just trying to avoid having to get another ball. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But I'm not worried, okay? Maybe this is my famous last words, but I'm not worried about running out of yarn. So yeah, this is my first time knitting with an unspun yarn, and it's actually really light. Like, it's not as light as a knitting with just mohair, but it's not as heavy as I thought it would be because it's so light and lofty, this yarn. I am knitting it with metal needles. I've seen online that wooden needles are better for knitting with unspun yarn because it doesn't like pull at the yarn as much and it doesn't rip, because this yarn will literally just come right apart. I just prefer how it felt with the metal needles, so I went with it, and so far it's going okay. I've definitely had scenarios where the yarn has broken because I pulled it too tight, but I think holding it with the mohair really helps because the silk core of the mohair seems to take the tension as I'm knitting, as opposed to the unspun yarn taking the tension. So it hasn't been that bad, but I will say, I think I mentioned this last time too, like the ideal situation of knitting this is just having it like flat on the floor and pulling up like this to get more yarn. Whereas if this gets caught on anything or it rolls around, like there's gonna be too much tension and it'll just break. I can't really leave the house with this unless I'm just transporting it to knit somewhere else where I'm sitting. That's the only thing. It's not very portable. Anyway, for now this is a home project and that's fine with me. When I cast on the neck, I was a little nervous because it looks kind of funky, the rolled neck, but then I tried it on and I think it looks cool. So I'm gonna just go with it. It's a little bit different out of my regular like rolled ribbed collar comfort zone, but I think it's fun. I think it's a little futuristic looking. It's kind of giving like Fifth Element. I don't know. I think it's awesome. So I'm really happy with this. I'm excited to have it done and to be able to wear it this winter. The next thing I have to chat about is using some yarn that's very exciting, and that is the yarn that I chatted about in my last video. It's the Knitting Loft Dust Mohair in the color Candy Floss, and it's this really beautiful white creamy mohair with speckles of pink, a little bit of blue and yellow throughout, but mostly just pink speckles. I just think it's so gorgeous, and I was planning on holding 2 strands of this together to make a fluffy mohair sweater. I decided after much deliberation to cast on the ivy blouse. I know. It's a petite knit pattern. I really need to get away from just doing petite knit, but something about her patterns just are reliable, you know, like you know what you're gonna get. And I had a vision of the top being more fitted, just plain, and something I could wear dressed up or dressed down. That's why I decided on the ivy blouse, but I did cast it on. So the ivy blouse is, like I said, petite knit. It's got 23 stitch gauge for 3.5mm needle, and I did thankfully hit gauge, which is honestly rare for me. I feel like I rarely hit gauge nowadays. This is what she's looking like. It is a top-down raglan sweater with a sort of mock neck, crew neck type situation. Has a little bit of a roll because it's just a plain knitted neckline. So it starts with increases for the front and back yoke here, and you create like a little shoulder saddle situation, and then you start increasing for the armhole right here, and then I think you increase on the front and back yoke again too, to sort of shape the shoulder so it comes out and then down and then out again. That's the idea. So it's a lot more fitted than some of the other mohair patterns that I've seen, and that's kind of what I was going for. The body is knit just all the way down in the round, and the sleeves are more slim fitting sleeves with a little bit of an increase at the end, I think. They may or may not have an increase. If they do, it's very subtle. Yeah, that's what I went with. I'm actually obsessed with the fabric that it's creating. It is literally candy floss. The color name is very accurate. It's got these like specks of pink. I think there's more on the back. Some bright pops of pink, but then overall, like if you look at it from far away, it's kind of giving solid colors. So I feel like it's not too much, but it's fun. I wanted something simple for the pattern itself to allow the yarn to kind of shine. And I'm using a bunny stitch marker, which actually matches the yarn perfectly. This is how it's turning out. Like I said, I'm just almost at the sleeve increases, and then I'll start with the front and back yoke increases to continue to shape the shoulders. I am holding 2 strands of yarn held together. I decided to wind up 2 balls and use them together instead of using the center pull method for a couple reasons. One, it's hand-dyed yarn, so I wanted to maximize like mixing the skeins of yarn together to avoid pooling and that sort of thing, although so far it's not an issue at all. And also, I find sometimes when I do center pull method, I have trouble finding the other end of the yarn, and also I sometimes get yarn barf, which if you don't know what yarn barf is, it's a nightmare. It's when the yarn just tangles in on itself and it's almost impossible to untangle. Sometimes you have to cut it and reattach it together to get the yarn back wound properly. I want to avoid yarn barf with mohair at all costs because I've dealt with it once in my life when I had to unravel. Actually, I was making a cumulus blouse out of mohair and I changed my mind. I didn't want to make it anymore. I decided to unravel it, and that yarn barf was truly a nightmare. Like, the entire length of my apartment was covered in blue fluff for about a week after I did that. So let's avoid yarn barf, and that's why I'm doing 2 skeins of yarn at a time. So yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot else to say regarding this pattern and how it's coming together. It's pretty straightforward. I'm really excited to wear it. It is see-through, but my plan is to just wear a nude bralette or tank top underneath, and I think it'll be fine. One thing I will say is knitting with just silk mohair is kind of hard on my fingertip, because when I'm knitting, I hold my finger here, keep the stitches from falling off, but the silk core of the mohair is kind of rough, if that makes sense. It low-key like hurts my finger after a while, so I have to take breaks when I'm knitting this, and I didn't expect that to be the case, but it is. It's not that this mohair isn't soft though, because it really is soft. It's not itchy at all. I could certainly have this against my face or my chest with no issue. It has a really nice halo too, but it's something about the silk core that just is irritating on my finger. Does anyone else have that, or is that just me? I don't know, maybe I'm sensitive, but yeah, that's the main issue, and that's not to do with the yarn or the pattern. Now I know that I picked the easy way out and I was basic and decided to go with a petite knit pattern for this yarn, but I did actually have some really incredible comments from you guys with pattern suggestions, and it kind of got the wheels turning. I wanted to share it with you guys so that if you have mohair that you're trying to use, you can get some inspo from these patterns. The first one that was suggested was the Summer Lotus from Maria Solftoft. It's knit with all mohair, I believe 2 strands held together, and it's a bulky weight gauge, so it's 15 stitches per 4 inches. So you definitely have more of a mesh-like kind of loose and airy fabric, which is really beautiful. It has like a closer to the neckline. I believe it's like a boat neck or a crew neck, and it's a little more oversized, and it has really cute little bell sleeves on it. That one was very tempting. However, I felt like the gauge was a little bit too loose for my preference because I had gauge swatched and got 23 and was really happy with it. But that is definitely one that I would be interested in making with a thicker yarn to get more of like a dense fabric and more opaque fabric. The next one is very fun, and it was the Gallia sweater by Camille K. This one is a crew neck with this beautiful lace pattern all down the sleeves, and it's a little more oversized as well. The gauge for this one is 20 stitches per 4 inches, and I really loved the lace pattern on the sleeves. However, I thought it was maybe a little bit too busy for the variegated yarn that I have, but that pattern was really beautiful. There's also some more simple ones. The Kyoto sweater from Strick and Fit is a v-neck, and it's very similar to the Cumulus blouse, so if you're looking for an alternative to the Cumulus blouse, this is a great option. It has a 16 stitch gauge, so it's a little more loose as well, but it has like a beautiful v-neck, plain rolled hem on the v-neck, and then it's just a nice oversized relaxed mohair sweater. I believe the sample has stripes on it, but you could obviously make it with no stripes, variegated yarn, whatever, and it would really allow it to sort of pop. The last one is the Michaela sweater from Petiteknit, and this one is really stunning. It's kind of similar to a traditional rolled hem drop shoulder sweater, but it's made with mohair, and I've never seen anything like it, and I was surprised honestly about the rolled hem with the mohair because I don't think I've ever seen that, but it's a really cool design. It's oversized, as I said, and it has an 18 stitch gauge, so it is looser overall. This sweater is really clean, and I loved the look of it. I honestly was leaning towards knitting this one, except for the fact that it was a little more oversized. I wanted this sweater to be a little more fitted, and I'm also working with only about 1,000 meters of yarn, which is gonna give me more of a fitted sweater, and I'm not gonna have as much leeway for like a rolled neckline or an oversized fit or lace pattern. So overall, that is why I went with the Petiteknit, but I wanted to share the ideas from you guys because those were very inspiring, and they got some new knitwear designers on my radar. I really love the knitwear from Petiteknit, so I'm interested in making some of her stuff at some point in the future. That is everything that I've been working on lately. I haven't acquired anything new since the last time I filmed a video, but something I want to finish off chatting about is gift knitting. I know this is kind of a divisive topic. I mostly knit for myself throughout the year, if I'm honest, and I don't feel guilty about it at all. Knitting is a hobby that I do for myself and for fun. I'm both a project and a process knitter, I feel like. So I get enjoyment out of making stuff, but I also get enjoyment out of finishing things and wearing knitwear that I make myself. I haven't done a whole lot of gift knitting overall. I do it here and there, and I definitely don't knit gifts for everyone. I think that there's definitely people in my life that are knit worthy and people that are not knit worthy. So I'm a little selective with who I do gift knit for. It definitely has to be someone that appreciates the time and effort that I put into it, and also is going to care for the knitwear appropriately so it doesn't get like destroyed. So yeah, all that is to say that I do plan on doing some gift knitting, but I'm not gonna go crazy. But just having the idea in my head that I want to do gift knitting for Christmas means that I should probably start thinking about it now instead of when it's too late. So I have some ideas for gift knits and I just want to chat about them. So that's what I'm going to do. And if you're my family, stop watching this right now because this is about you and I want it to remain a surprise. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing that I was thinking of making is a pair of the Nilo Lapisette convertible mittens. I made this pair for my partner a few months ago now, in the Topsy Farms worsted yarn in the color Purple Heather. He loves them. They turned out really nicely. nicely. And the pattern was so quick to knit, so I want to just run it back because I'm really happy with like how those turned out. I have this, which is essentially an entire skein of Topsy Farms worsted in the color medium gray, and this is what I used for my Dagmar zipper sweater, which I chatted about in my previous video. This will be enough to make another pair of mittens with some leftover because I've already made the pattern and I had some left over. So I think this time I'm gonna make a pair of mittens for my dad. I think his size is probably gonna be the same as Devin's size, so I'll just do the exact same thing and make the cuff a little bit longer this time because I know that I will have extra yarn. I think these are gonna be very much appreciated by him. He really loves woolly accessories and really appreciates a nice 100% wool rustic piece of knitwear. So I've done a hat for him in the past. I knitted a couple little fish bags for him last year, and so I think a pair of gloves would be perfect. So that's the plan. I am also partly saying this to keep myself accountable, so I actually do all of this. So yeah, that's the first gift knit that I'm planning on making. The next thing that I'm thinking of making uses 2 colors of yarn, and this is kind of a throwback to my very first YouTube video actually, where I showed these as a finished object. I made last year for Christmas a pair of colorwork mittens for my brother, and they did not turn out how I had hoped because I wound up making 2 left-handed mittens, or maybe they were both right-handed. Yeah, so that's how that went. I didn't realize until it was all done and they got it. He tried to put them on his hands and one of them was backwards. So I'm going to redeem myself. Basically, my brother and sister-in-law went to Scotland for their honeymoon. They brought me back some yarn. This is Sky Weaver's worsted in like a natural gray and a cream white color. I don't remember exactly because it was so long ago. I have this also in my Ravelry, the original pair of mittens that I made. They are colorwork mitten and the primary color was this white and then the secondary color was this gray. And my whole plan was to make 2 pairs of mittens for them, one of them being white with gray and then the other being gray with white. And that way I could use all of the yarn, or at least I wouldn't run out of yarn. And then they could have like coordinating mittens. But now that they have a pair that's primarily white that's both left-handed, the plan is to do mittens that are right-handed now, but they're primarily gray with a contrast of white. I can't remember off the top of my head what pattern I used for those mittens last year. I'm not sure if I'll use the same one. It might be fun to have a different pattern and then they could each have a mitten that's kind of different, you know? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it might be a cool look. So that's the plan. I don't know that I'm going to finish a pair of colorwork mittens by the time Christmas rolls around, but I'm going to cast them on soon and hopefully I can get some progress on it, and I'm starting it early enough that they'll get done. So that's kind of what we're working with right now. This is the yarn. And it's really beautiful, like rustic, woolly yarn, not too scratchy. I used a 3mm needle for the mittens last time, and the fabric was really nice and warm. And actually, what's also funny is this was one of the first colorwork things that I ever did, and one of the mittens was way tighter than the other one. That wound up being kind of a blessing and a curse. So my sister-in-law has small hands, and then my brother has larger hands. So the larger mitten fits on my brother's hand, whereas the smaller mitten fits on my sister-in-law's hand. So they both have a left-handed mitten, and now I need to make 2 mittens that are right-handed that are also different sizes. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of keeping track and not forgetting what I'm to be doing, because that was the whole reason why I screwed it up in the first place. But I think it'll be really nice if I can get these mittens done. My whole plan was to do it last year and it did not happen. I am telling you now to keep me accountable. I want to make these mittens. So that's the second sort of gift knit that I had planned. The last thing I want to chat about uses some yarn that I got on my trip to Iceland this summer, and it's from Upspunny Mini Mill. It's called Hold-A-Bond, and it's 100% virgin Icelandic wool in this gray natural color. It's got some nice hairs going on. I have 2 skeins of this and it is 100 meters each. So I have about 200 meters, which should be enough to make a hat. That is the plan. Apparently this is worsted. I honestly don't know in what world this is worsted, but we'll see how it looks when I gauge swatch and block it, because hopefully, fingers crossed, it plumps up and we can get more mileage out of this. The plan right now is to make a hat with flaps a la this photo or this photo. When I went to Iceland, my partner picked out this yarn and he said that he wanted a hat with flaps. So that is what he shall get. Hopefully I can make it work with this amount of yarn that I have. I'm thinking that I can, because if I can make a double folded toque out of this amount of yarn, which I think I could, what's stopping me from doing a hat with flaps? I feel like that uses less yarn. So anyway, we'll see how my gauge swatch goes. I'm not convinced that this is truly a worsted weight yarn, but I have done a little bit of digging on Ravelry and I want to chat about patterns that are flap hat patterns, because this is a whole new world to me and I've not looked into hats with flaps prior to recently. So the two that I am thinking, depending on what my gauge is, are the very basic bulky ear flap hat from Wild West Woolies. This is a 14 stitch gauge, so it's definitely bulky. I think it's a top down, you do some increases and then you shape the ear flaps. I don't think I'm convinced by the little top pom-pom thing. I wouldn't do that, but something like that is what I'm trying to go for. Like just a simple hat with a little shaping for a little flap on the ear, a cheeky little ear flap. So there's that one, and then there's the double layer ear flap hat from Emmy Koplia. It has an 18 stitch gauge, so it's more like a worsted weight, which is what I'm thinking I would get out of this yarn, is an 18 stitch gauge. And I feel like the increases are a little bit cleaner than the other one, but this is the one that I'm leaning towards. I think the bulky version from Wild West Woolies is free. It's available for free, and then the double layer ear flap hat is paid. It's like $5 or something. Those are the two patterns that I'm thinking. I've seen a lot of other ear flap hat patterns on Ravelry in all different gauges, so ultimately the one I choose is simply going to be depending on my gauge. I'm really hoping that I have enough yarn to make this, and if there's a situation where there's like a double layer on the inside, I might wind up actually just using a different yarn to maximize my outer yarn that I have, if that makes sense. Any of you guys have made those patterns? Let me know your experience, or if you have any other ear flap hat patterns that you've done in the past and you liked, please let me know down below. I would love some input. That is a lot. That is all I had to say today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching the end of this video. Thank you so much for engaging and enjoying my last video. Your feedback in the comments has been really helpful. I feel like we're getting such a great community on this channel, so I'm really happy to have you here. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I post updates on my Instagram in between videos, which is @hella.knits. If you want to learn more about the details of all the projects I have on the go, you can check out my Ravelry, which is @hella.knitting. As I said, if you have any questions at all, any comments, any feedback, please leave them down below. I can't wait to see you in my next